In 1965, a tragedy unfolded that would shock the nation and become one of the darkest true crime stories in U.S. history. Sylvia Likens and her sister Jenny were left in the care of Gertrude Boniszewski, a seemingly ordinary woman in Indianapolis. What should have been a temporary arrangement turned into a nightmare that would haunt true crime enthusiasts for decades to come. Before we delve into this chilling tale, a word of caution. The following content contains disturbing details that may not be suitable for all viewers. Discretion is strongly advised. Sylvia's story began with hope, as many tragic tales do. Her parents, carnival workers, believed they were leaving their daughters in capable hands while they traveled for work. Little did they know that the Boniszewski household would become the stage for unimaginable cruelty and suffering. At first, life in the Boniszewski home seemed strict but manageable. Gertrude, the mother of 7, imposed rules and chores on their new charges. But as days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in the house began to darken. Sylvia, a pretty and outgoing teenager, became the target of Gertrude's inexplicable rage and jealousy. The mistreatment started small, harsh words, unfair punishments, and isolation from the other children, but it quickly escalated into something far more sinister. Gertrude, aided by her own children and even neighborhood kids, turned Sylvia's life into a living hell. Neighbors on the quiet Indianapolis street noticed something was amiss. They saw Sylvia, once vibrant and full of life, become withdrawn and fearful. Some heard screams coming from the house, while others witnessed Sylvia performing grueling tasks in the yard. But in a tragic twist of fate, no one intervened. The community's silence became an unwitting accomplice to the horrors unfolding behind closed doors. As summer turned to fall, Sylvia's condition deteriorated rapidly. She was forced to sleep in the basement, deprived of food and basic hygiene. The abuse took on sadistic new forms, with Gertrude and her accomplices inflicting burns, cuts, and other injuries on the helpless girl. Sylvia's pleas for mercy fell on deaf ears, as her tormentors seemed to feed off her suffering. Jenny, Sylvia's younger sister, watched in helpless horror as her sibling endured unspeakable acts. Disabled and fearful, Jenny was powerless to stop the abuse or seek help. The bond between the sisters, once a source of strength, became a painful reminder of their shared nightmare. October 26, 1965, marked the tragic end of Sylvia's ordeal. After months of relentless abuse, her body finally gave out. Police, responding to an anonymous tip, discovered Sylvia's battered and emaciated body in the basement of the Boniszewski home. The scene that greeted them was so horrific that even hardened officers were left shaken. The subsequent investigation uncovered the full extent of the atrocities committed against Sylvia. Medical examiners cataloged over 150 separate injuries on her body, ranging from burns and cuts to severe malnutrition. The basement where Sylvia spent her final days became a grim testament to human cruelty, with crude carvings on her skin serving as a final, heartbreaking indignity. As news of Sylvia's death spread, the community that had remained silent for so long was forced to confront its collective failure. Neighbors who had turned a blind eye now grappled with guilt and disbelief. How could such evil exist in their midst, and how had they failed to recognize and stop it? The trial of Gertrude Boniszewski and her accomplices captivated and horrified the nation. Prosecutors painted a picture of systematic torture and abuse, while defense attorneys struggled to explain the inexplicable. Gertrude, portraying herself as a overwhelmed single mother, tried to shift blame onto the children involved. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the jury was unmoved by her attempts at justification. In a verdict that brought some measure of justice for Sylvia, Gertrude Boniszewski was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. However, the outcome for her accomplices was less satisfying to many. Several of the young people involved, including Gertrude's own children and neighborhood teens, received relatively light sentences. Some served only a few years before being released, a fact that continues to anger advocates for victims' rights to this day. The aftermath of the Sylvia Likens case left an indelible mark on Indianapolis and the nation as a whole. It sparked discussions about child abuse, community responsibility, and the dark potential that exists within seemingly ordinary people. Social workers and law enforcement agencies reevaluated their protocols for identifying and responding to signs of abuse, hoping to prevent future tragedies. For Jenny Likens, survival came with its own burden. She spent years grappling with survivor's guilt and the trauma of what she had witnessed. Her testimony at the trial was crucial in securing convictions, but it also forced her to relive the horrors she had endured alongside her sister. In the years that followed, Jenny became an advocate for abuse victims, using her painful experiences to help others and ensure that Sylvia's memory lived on. The case of Sylvia Likens serves as a chilling reminder of the consequences of collective silence and inaction. It demonstrates how cruelty can flourish when those in a position to intervene choose to look away. The complicity of the neighborhood children who participated in or witnessed the abuse raises uncomfortable questions about the nature of evil and the power of peer pressure. Decades later, the Sylvia Likens case continues to fascinate and disturb true crime enthusiasts and social historians alike. Books, documentaries, and even feature films have attempted to make sense of the senseless violence inflicted on an innocent girl. Each retelling serves as a grim reminder of the darkness that can exist behind the facade of normalcy in any community. As we reflect on Sylvia's story, we are confronted with uncomfortable truths about human nature and societal responsibility. The case challenges us to consider how we might react in similar circumstances, and whether we would have the courage to speak up in the face of evil. It reminds us that vigilance and compassion are not just virtues, but necessary safeguards against the worst impulses of humanity. The legacy of Sylvia Likens lives on, not just in true crime annals, but in changed laws, improved social services, and a heightened awareness of the signs of abuse. Her tragic story serves as a call to action, urging us to be more attentive to the welfare of those around us and to have the courage to intervene when we suspect something is wrong. As we close this chapter of one of the most disturbing cases in American true crime history, we are left with a sobering reminder of the importance of speaking out against injustice and protecting the vulnerable among us. Sylvia's life was cut tragically short, but her story continues to impact and educate, ensuring that her suffering was not entirely in vain. If you found this video informative and thought-provoking, please consider subscribing to our channel for more in-depth explorations of chilling real-life cases, true crime breakdowns, and stories that history tried to forget. Together, we can learn from the past and work towards a future where tragedies like Sylvia's become increasingly rare. Remember, silence in the face of cruelty only empowers the perpetrators. Let Sylvia's story inspire us all to be more vigilant, compassionate, and willing to stand up for those who cannot defend themselves. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
On a crisp November morning in 2005, the tranquil town of Robinson, Texas was jolted awake by a frantic 911 call.
Arlene Gentry.
His voice trembled as she reported a horrifying scene. Her husband Keith lay motionless in their bed, gravely wounded. She painted a picture of chaos. The back door stood ajar. Guns were missing, and Keith's life hung by a thread. The community held its collective breath, but hope faded quickly. 2 days later, Keith Gentry succumbed to a single gunshot wound to the head. At first glance, all signs pointed to a tragic home invasion gone wrong. But as investigators delved deeper, unsettling details began to emerge. The crime scene felt off, somehow staged rather than the chaotic aftermath of a genuine break-in. Outside, guns were found neatly stacked, as if carefully placed rather than hastily discarded by fleeing intruders. It was a detail that nagged at detectives, a loose thread that, when pulled, began to unravel the entire narrative Darlene had woven. The real breakthrough came in the most mundane of places, the family's trash can. Nestled among the everyday detritus, investigators discovered a pair of latex gloves. These weren't just any gloves. They were a treasure trove of damning evidence. Gunshot residue clung to their surface, a silent testimony to their presence at the moment the fatal shot was fired, but the gloves had more secrets to reveal. DNA analysis showed traces from both Keith and Darlene, linking them inexorably to the crime. And there, caught in the finger of one glove, was the final piece of the puzzle. A single, .22 caliber shell casing matching the bullet that had ended Keith's life. As investigators dug into the Gentry's background, a picture of a marriage under strain began to emerge. Financial troubles had cast a long shadow over their relationship, creating tension and resentment. But there was another factor that cast Darlene's actions in an even more sinister light. Keith's life insurance policy. Worth nearly $750,000, it provided a powerful motive for murder disguised as a random act of violence. Despite the mounting evidence, Keith's parents stood firmly by Darlene's side. They couldn't believe their daughter-in-law capable of such a heinous act, clinging to the hope that there must be another explanation. But their faith was about to be shaken to its core by a series of events that would leave no room for doubt. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Darlene approached a local landowner with an unusual request. She asked him to fill in a pond on the property, a seemingly innocuous favor that immediately set alarm bells ringing for the police. Acting on their suspicions, they conducted a thorough search of the pond before it could be destroyed. Their efforts were rewarded with the discovery of the murder weapon, a .22 caliber revolver, the missing piece that tied all the evidence together. But the investigators weren't content to rest on this discovery. They devised a plan to catch Darlene red-handed, to prove beyond any doubt that she knew exactly where the gun had been hidden. Hidden cameras were strategically placed around the pond, their lenses trained on the murky waters. The trap was set, and they didn't have to wait long for Darlene to take the bait. The footage captured was as damning as it was chilling. There, in full view of the hidden cameras, was Darlene Gentry, wading into the cold pond waters. Her movements were purposeful, her search focused on the exact spot where the gun had already been recovered. It was a moment of absolute certainty, erasing any lingering doubts about her involvement in Keith's death. As 2007 dawned, Darlene Gentry found herself facing a jury of her peers. The trial that unfolded was a meticulous presentation of the overwhelming evidence against her. Prosecutors painted a vivid picture of a carefully planned murder, disguised as a botched burglary. They walked the jury through each piece of evidence: the suspiciously staged crime scene, the incriminating gloves with their telltale traces of gunshot residue and DNA, and the dramatic video of Darlene searching the pond. The defense fought hard, trying to sow seeds of doubt and offer alternative explanations. But in the face of such compelling evidence, their efforts felt increasingly desperate. As the trial progressed, the image of Darlene as a grieving widow crumbled, replaced by that of a calculating killer who had taken her husband's life for financial gain. When the jury returned with their verdict, the courtroom fell silent. The word guilty echoed through the room, sealing Darlene's fate. The judge's sentence was equally decisive: 60 years in prison, a term that would likely see Darlene spend the rest of her life behind bars. As she was led away, the full weight of her actions seemed to settle on her shoulders, the realization that she had not only taken a life, but destroyed her own in the process. The aftermath of the trial left a family shattered. Keith's parents, who had stood by Darlene for so long, now faced the heartbreaking task of raising their 3 grandsons. These young boys, innocent victims of their mother's actions, would grow up without either parent, their father taken by violence, their mother by justice. It was a cruel legacy, a reminder of how one person's choices can ripple out to affect so many lives. Years have passed since that fateful November morning, but the case continues to haunt the town of Robinson. Darlene Gentry, now a fixture in the Texas prison system, has never wavered from her claim of innocence, despite the mountain of evidence against her. Despite the video that caught her returning to the scene of her crime, she maintains that she played no part in Keith's death. Her unwavering denial adds another layer of tragedy to an already heartbreaking story. For Keith's family, for the sons growing up without their parents, there can be no closure as long as Darlene refuses to acknowledge her guilt. It's a final act of selfishness, denying them even the small comfort of the truth. The case of Darlene and Keith Gentry serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of betrayal and greed. It's a story that continues to be told in Robinson, a cautionary tale about the darkness that can lurk behind the facade of a seemingly normal life. For those who remember that November morning, who lived through the shock and the grief that followed, the wounds may have healed, but the scars remain. A permanent reminder of the day their quiet town became the setting for an unthinkable crime. As Darlene Gentry serves out her sentence, her sons continue to grow, shaped by the absence of both their parents. They carry with them the weight of their family's tragic history, a burden no child should have to bear. And in the quiet moments, when the noise of the world fades away, one can't help but wonder, Does Darlene ever think about the lives she's changed forever? Does she ever wish she could turn back time and make a different choice? Or does she cling to her claims of innocence, even in the face of her own reflection? The story of Darlene and Keith Gentry is more than just a true crime tale. It's a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. A reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating power of deceit. It stands as a somber testament to the fact that sometimes the greatest dangers we face are not from strangers, but from those closest to us, the ones we should be able to trust with our very lives. I was 18 when this happened. It was summer, no school, no job. Most of my days were spent inside playing games, watching YouTube, or just relaxing. My parents were out of town, leaving me home alone. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes I'd invite friends over, but that night I was enjoying the quiet, watching Netflix and scrolling on my phone. It was around midnight when I heard a knock at the front door. At first I almost opened it without thinking, but then I realized how late it was. I looked through the peephole and saw two men in similar clothes, standing silently. They called out asking for my parents by name. I stayed quiet. After a moment, they whispered to each other and walked off. But no headlights, no car. It seemed they had come on foot. Minutes later, I heard footsteps again. This time they went around the house. I saw them slip through the fence into my backyard. They started tampering with the back door. I hid in the garage and called the police. Then I heard the loud crack of the door breaking. The men went inside, heading upstairs, closing a bedroom door behind them. Silence followed. 10 minutes later, police arrived. The men argued upstairs before officers arrested them. They never explained why they were there, only charged with breaking and entering. But it seemed like they were waiting for my parents to come home. Years passed, and I thought I'd left that fear behind. I moved to Wyoming, living alone on a large property surrounded by woods. One night during a heavy rainstorm, I heard a knock at my door. A stranger stood there, soaked to the bone, asking if he could stay the night. Something about him made me uneasy. I politely refused, saying I had no space. He left without argument, disappearing into the darkness. The next morning, I spotted movement near the tree line. Someone had set up a small camp, barely visible through the mist. I told myself it was probably just a hiker, but a nagging feeling wouldn't let go. As night fell, I double-checked all my locks and drew the curtains tight. Around midnight, I heard footsteps on my porch. Peering through a gap in the blinds, I saw him. The stranger from before, now holding a rifle. He tried the doorknob, then moved to a window. My heart raced as I grabbed my own gun, hands shaking. When he started to pry at the window frame, I fired a warning shot into the air. He bolted, vanishing into the woods. I called the police, my voice trembling as I explained. They arrived quickly, searching the property. What they found chilled me to the bone. A duffel bag was buried near where I'd seen the camp. Inside were rope, duct tape, a hunting knife, and other items I didn't want to think about. This wasn't just a burglar. He had planned something much worse. The police never found him. He said he probably fled the state, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there watching, waiting. I installed security cameras, got a dog, anything to feel safe again. But at night, when the wind whispers through the trees, I still imagine footsteps on my porch, a shadow at my window. These experiences taught me how vulnerable we can be, even in our own homes. The world isn't always as safe as we want to believe. Those men who broke in when I was 18, what were they really after? And the man in Wyoming, what horrors did he have planned? The not knowing is almost worse than what actually happened. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being paranoid. But then I remember the sound of that back door splintering, the glint of a rifle in the moonlight. I remember how close I came to opening that door at midnight, not realizing the danger on the other side. It makes me think about all the times we let our guard down, never suspecting that someone might be watching, planning, waiting for the right moment. I still live alone, but I'm always alert now. Every creak in the night, every unexpected shadow makes my heart race. The odds of something happening again are slim, but the fear lingers. Because the scariest part is knowing that there are people out there with hidden motives. People who might look normal on the surface, but harbor dark intentions. In the end, I'm left with more questions than answers. Why did those men target my parents' house? What would have happened if I hadn't been home? And the man in Wyoming? How long had he been watching me before he knocked on my door that rainy night? The police say I'm safe now, but a part of me will always be looking over my shoulder, wondering if he's still out there somewhere, planning his next move. These experiences changed me. I'm more cautious now, more aware of my surroundings. But I also appreciate the quiet moments more, the times when I feel truly safe. Because now I know how quickly that safety can be shattered. All it takes is a knock at the door, a stranger with a hidden agenda, and suddenly your whole world can change. So I keep my doors locked, my curtains drawn, and I never ever open the door at night without knowing who's on the other side. The rain pounded against the windows, each drop a haunting reminder of the isolation that surrounded her. Sarah, a 22-year-old college student, had always dreamed of living alone. But on this stormy night, that dream was about to become a nightmare. It was just past 9 p.m. when Sarah settled into her cozy apartment. Grateful for the warmth that contrasted sharply with the chilly October air outside, she had just finished a grueling study session and was looking forward to a quiet evening of relaxation. With a steaming mug of hot chocolate in hand, she curled up on the couch, ready to lose herself in the latest true crime documentary on Netflix. The howling wind outside seemed to crescendo as Sarah became engrossed in the show. She barely noticed when the first knock came. It was so soft, so hesitant, that she almost convinced herself she had imagined it. But then it came again. 3 slow, deliberate taps that sent a chill down her spine. Sarah muted the TV, her heart suddenly racing. She wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. Cautiously, she approached the door, her bare feet silent on the cold hardwood floor. Through the peephole, she saw a figure shrouded in darkness. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, stood on her doorstep. His face was obscured by the shadow of a hood, and his hands were buried deep in the pockets of a long, dark coat. Every instinct told Sarah not to open the door. She held her breath, hoping that if she remained silent, the stranger would leave. Instead, a voice unnervingly calm and smooth drifted through the door. "Excuse me, miss. I'm so sorry to bother you, but my car broke down just down the street. Could I use your phone to call for help?" The words were polite, even friendly, but something about the tone made Sarah's skin crawl. Why her apartment? Why so late on such a miserable night? Surely there were businesses still open, places more appropriate for a stranded motorist to seek assistance. Sarah remained frozen, her mind racing through possible responses. Should she answer, tell him to go away, pretend she wasn't home? Before she could decide, the man spoke again, his voice taking on an edge that hadn't been there before. "I know you're in there. Can see the light under the door. Please, I just need to make a quick call." The change in his tone sent a jolt of fear through Sarah. She backed away from the door, her eyes never leaving the peephole. The knocking resumed, louder this time, more insistent. The doorknob rattled as the man tested it, and Sarah silently thanked herself for always keeping it locked. With trembling hands, Sarah reached for her phone. She dialed 911, her voice barely above a whisper, as she explained the situation to the operator. The calm voice on the other end assured her that help was on the way, urging her to stay quiet and hidden. But the man at the door wasn't giving up. The knocking had stopped, replaced by an even more terrifying sound. Metal scraped against metal as he attempted to pick the lock. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, her eyes wide with terror as she realized he was trying to force his way in. Retreated to her bedroom, closing and locking the door behind her. The sound of splintering wood echoed through the apartment as the front door finally gave way. Heavy footsteps moved through the living room, slow and deliberate. Sarah pressed herself against the far wall, praying that the bedroom door would hold. Just when she thought all hope was lost, a new sound cut through the night. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. The footsteps in the living room faltered, then quickened. Sarah heard the front door slam, followed by the sound of running feet on the wet pavement outside. When the police arrived moments later, they found Sarah huddled in her bedroom, shaken but unharmed. The front door hung off its hinges, a stark reminder of how close she had come to disaster. Despite an extensive search of the area, the mysterious intruder was never found. In the days that followed, Sarah learned that she wasn't the only one who had been targeted. Several other young women in the area reported similar incidents. A man at the door, asking for help, becoming increasingly aggressive when turned away. The community was on edge, wondering when or where he might strike next. Sarah never spent another night in that apartment. The experience left her with a deep-seated fear that took years of therapy to overcome. Even now, years later, the sound of rain against windows or an unexpected knock at the door can send her heart racing. The case of the man at the door remains unsolved to this day. Was he a simple burglar or something far more sinister? Did he specifically target Sarah, or was she just a random victim of opportunity? These questions haunt Sarah and the community to this day. As you lock your doors tonight and settle in for the evening, ask yourself, what would you do if you heard that knock? Would you open the door? And remember, sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't the ones in movies or books. They are the ones waiting just outside, in the shadows of a rainy night. Subscribe for more chilling true crime stories that will make you think twice about answering the door.
In 2014, a young German tourist vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of mystery that would captivate millions. This is the story of Lars Mittank, the man who became YouTube's most famous missing person. Lars was just 28 years old, enjoying a carefree vacation with friends on the Bulgarian coast. Athletic, healthy, and full of life, he seemed an unlikely candidate for one of the internet's most enduring mysteries. But a series of strange events would soon spiral into a disappearance that continues to baffle investigators and amateur sleuths alike. It all began with a seemingly minor incident at a local bar. A scuffle broke out, leaving Lars with a ruptured eardrum. Doctors advised him not to fly and prescribed antibiotics. From that moment on, Lars's behavior took a sharp and inexplicable turn. Friends reported that Lars grew increasingly paranoid and agitated. He began making frantic phone calls to his mother back in Germany, insisting that he was being followed by shadowy figures. "Mum, they're after me," he pleaded, begging her to cancel his credit cards and bank accounts. Those close to him were baffled by this sudden change in demeanor. The once carefree tourist now seemed consumed by an invisible threat. But nothing could prepare anyone for what happened next. On July 8, 2014, security cameras at Varna Airport captured footage that would soon be viewed by millions around the world. The grainy video shows Lars pacing nervously in the terminal, his eyes darting back and forth. Suddenly, without warning, he bolts. We see Lars sprint through the airport, weaving past bewildered travelers. He drops his luggage, pushes past security, and bursts through the exit doors. The last glimpse of Lars Mittank shows him running across the parking lot and disappearing into the surrounding fields. Those 30 seconds of footage would become the cornerstone of one of YouTube's most viral true crime mysteries. In the years since Lars vanished, countless theories have emerged to explain his bizarre behavior and sudden disappearance. Some believe he suffered a severe mental health crisis, possibly triggered by his medication or the trauma of his injury. The paranoia, confusion, and erratic actions could point to a psychotic break. Others suspect more sinister forces at play. Could Lars have stumbled upon something he wasn't meant to see? Was he really being pursued by dangerous individuals? The fact that he hasn't been seen or heard from since that day lends credence to the possibility of foul play. As the case gained traction online, armchair detectives pored over every detail. They analyzed Lars's final text messages, scrutinized the airport footage frame by frame, and even organized searches of the Bulgarian countryside. But despite years of effort, Lars Mittunk's whereabouts remain a mystery. The impact of Lars's disappearance extends far beyond the realm of true crime enthusiasts. His family continues to hold out hope, never giving up on the possibility that Lars might one day return home. His mother's heartbreaking pleas for information have touched millions around the world. Lars Mittunk's story serves as a stark reminder of how quickly a life can unravel, and how easily a person can vanish in our modern, interconnected world. It raises uncomfortable questions about mental health, the vulnerabilities we all face when traveling abroad, and the sometimes blurry line between paranoia and genuine danger. As the years pass, interest in Lars's case shows no signs of waning. New videos, podcasts, and online discussions continue to dissect every aspect of his final days in Bulgaria. Each piece of content brings a fresh wave of theories, debates, and calls for renewed investigation. The surveillance footage of Lars's frantic dash through the airport has become iconic in true crime circles. Those fleeting moments, a young man in obvious distress, making a desperate bid for what? Safety, freedom, escape from unseen pursuers, continue to haunt viewers. It's a visual representation of the larger mystery, a few seconds that encapsulate years of questions. But beyond the viral clips and online speculation, there's a very human story at the heart of this mystery. Lars Mittunk was not just a subject for internet sleuths or true crime aficionados. He was a son, a friend, a young man with his whole life ahead of him. His disappearance left a void in the lives of those who knew and loved him. The case also shines a light on the power and pitfalls of internet-driven investigations. While the online community has kept Lars's story alive and generated valuable leads, it has also been a breeding ground for wild speculation and sometimes harmful conspiracy theories. The line between genuine concern and morbid fascination can often blur in the world of true crime content. As time passes, the likelihood of finding concrete answers in Lars's case grows slimmer. Yet the mystery continues to captivate new audiences. Each share, each view, each comment represents someone else drawn into the orbit of this perplexing disappearance. In a sense, Lars Mittunk has become more than just a missing person. He has become a symbol of the unexplained, a reminder of how fragile our sense of security can be. The story of Lars Mittunk forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. How well do we really know the people in our lives? How quickly can a seemingly normal situation spiral out of control? And perhaps most disturbingly, could something like this happen to any one of us? As we reflect on Lars's case, we're left with more questions than answers. Was he running from real danger, or fleeing the demons in his own mind? Did he meet with foul play in those Bulgarian fields, or is he out there somewhere, living a new life under a new identity? Will his family ever get the closure they so desperately seek? The mystery of Lars Mittunk serves as a modern-day cautionary tale, a digital-age ghost story that continues to haunt and fascinate in equal measure. It's a reminder that in our world of constant surveillance and interconnectivity, it's still possible for a person to simply vanish. As this video comes to a close, We invite you to share your thoughts. What do you think happened to Lars Mittank? Do you believe he'll ever be found? And what does his story tell us about the nature of mystery in our modern world? Leave your theories in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the most baffling mysteries are the ones that happen to ordinary people on ordinary days. The case of Lars Mittank remains open, his fate unknown. But as long as people continue to watch, share, and discuss his story, Lars will never truly be forgotten. He lives on in the collective curiosity of millions, a perpetual question mark in the annals of true crime. And perhaps, someday, those questions will finally be answered. Please subscribe to my channel for weekly news stories.